Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Sea podcast. I was hoping for a well more joyful return, double return today, but it wasn't just wasn't meant to be, honestly. How are you, man? It's been a bit again.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be a lot happier, like you said, if we were talking about an Olympiacos win or even a better performance. But other than that, can't complain. Good to be back.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of the weird cases in which where it wasn't necessarily a bad performance in general because as a majority, at least in my opinion, we did not play badly necessarily. We just once again weren't clinical enough. And when you really have no one to come in and step up when needed from your bench, because when our best case scenario is a Yaremchuk that won't even jump to to attempt something in the 94th. I think it was the last major chance of the game because he's afraid he'll hurt himself even more when it's a goal that could very well send you through even to the round of 16. And now you're in a place where I'll stand by what I said. I had said that we needed 7 out of 9 points to get to the top 8. Now you're in a place where you need to go to the Dragao and win, in my opinion. It
Yeah,
was
I mean,
just way too costly.
yeah, I like you said, I think the biggest issue for Olympiacos this campaign, I think it's a couple things. Firstly, I think teams are taking us more seriously than they have ever before. I mean, I think part of winning a European competition is that teams like Twente, teams like Rangers, teams like Steaua at home, who might have tried to beat you in years past, would be happy to take a draw. And I think you saw that today. I mean, neither team, in my opinion, created a load of chances. But Twente specifically, I mean, they might have had two shots in the whole second half. I mean, they got to 0-0 at half. They saved the penalty, probably was like 40th minute. And I think they were like, listen, we'd be happy with a draw. I think that's what we saw. I think that's part of it. But like you said, having other people step up. We've scored 5 goals in 6 games, and 4 of those goals have been from Ayub El Kabi. I mean, the rest of our team has scored 1 goal in 6 matches. Uh, that's just not going to cut it. And I mean, it really hurts in these games where you're going to have your best player marked out of it. You need someone else to step up. I thought that Gelson Martins, probably his worst game that he's ever played for us. I thought that he was uh, really rough, especially towards the end. I mean, you talk about that chance that he created. Obviously, Yaremchuk could have gone in harder for it, but I think him as well. It was a facet of his game tonight was he was so indecisive. It looked like he was trying to shoot and cross at the same time. And I think you saw that from most guys on the pitch. I don't want to just single anybody out, but it was just one of those games where if El Kabi doesn't score and he had a really good penalty saved, you're out of luck because nobody else can step up.
I'm not necessarily gonna put the last chance on Zelson or say that he was just god awful. Uh, I think the main thing with Zelson, at least today, is that he lacked the confidence he usually had. And because that's honestly to be fair to Twente, because I'm not just necessarily afraid to give credit where it's due. Not amazing offensively, very rough and very controlled on the defensive part and the build. We were nowhere up until like the 30th. We were nowhere, absolutely nowhere. We were getting picked off like it was absolutely nothing. And if that that we aren't a team that can afford players injured at this level, if that comment is for Danny Garcia and Chiquinho, I agree because we missed. I'd say that we did miss both today because in place of Stamenic, for example. Not that he did anything. I'm not blaming Stamenic for today. You could have brought in Danny Garcia earlier for a dead tired Santiese who was in trouble if he got a red as well. If he got a yellow as well, if I'm not mistaken, he would have missed the game at the Dragao. And of course, we completely missed the anchor that is Chiquinho, who at most games at least is the main part of getting the ball from the midfield to the attack. Uh, that role was a bit on Willian today, I think, and that role doesn't fit Willian at all, especially when he's out on the wing. And I think that role was on Zelson a bit as well. That's why his game was a bit more messed up because he couldn't do what he wants to, at least in my opinion. If that comment though goes for what I said about Yaremchuk, for him afraid to go in harder because he would have gotten hurt more, honestly, hurt or not, what's the fucking difference?
Well, the one thing I will say in defense of Yaremchuk, I mean, I didn't think he was great or anything. I thought that he looked a lot better than I assumed he would when he came on. To play devil's advocate in that scenario, he might not have seen the cross until late because wearing those masks, it does cut off a lot of your peripheral. So perhaps that was the case. You hope that it was that his vision was obstructed and that he wouldn't jump. But if he just didn't jump because he didn't want to get hurt, then I mean, totally agree with you there. Like, you know, I would rather score the goal and be out for a week because I scored the goal that put us through in the Europa League. I mean, that's the mentality I look at it with. Um, but yeah, I mean, back to your point too about the midfield, I think obviously Santi, he's had injury issues. He's played a lot. He looked really tired today. I thought that Musa looked a bit tired today as well. I mean, it just seemed like in the middle we were kind of flat, and I don't think that's any sort of a slight against either of those guys because they've been fantastic for us this season. But we really did miss somebody driving the game forward. I think that Bobby's did that a bit towards the end of that first half when he got the penalty.
Best player for us today, and that's by
Absolutely.
far. That's by
Absolutely.
far.
I don't know why he came off. I mean, I would have honestly rather taken El Kabi off for Yaremchuk because, I mean, Babis was the only guy who really had energy and legs in the middle, and that's what we were missing so much. It's where you would have loved a Chiquinho or a Dani Garcia. But yeah, I mean, it's just the depth is showing. You hope that maybe we can make some signings in January. I really do think that we need, another catalyst either in the middle or up top because I mean again when your depth with a couple guys injured is Marko Stamenic and Roman Yaremchuk, I mean you're just not going to go anywhere with that. I think that's really where the fall off lies. If we don't get that goal before the starters tire, then we're not going to score.
I'm trying to stray away from the whole transfer talk, at least yet. But I think before we definitely need like 3, 4 positions. We'll talk about that in a whole separate show. But I'd say before anyone comes in, we need to find solutions for people to go out. Ideally, sales. A bit less ideally loans, but even for some people like Yarmchuk is the main example in my opinion. If we do what Ike did with Chuber, asking him to find the team and then releasing him, honestly, at this point, if it's with the 1 or 2 people that need to go and we find no other solution, I'd honestly take it. Even if we couldn't bring someone in, it would mean that the young guys would get more time, could mean that more young guys would get called up, like Pneumonides. Uh, and of course, you were wondering, I was wondering as well, why Papacanelos and Bakulas weren't in the squad today, and that is because of the youth league. I confirm that. But you can't. as much as I would love for Papacanelos, Bakulas to get the role that Musa has had since the start of the season, that Kostulas has now, you can't rely on that. You need the depth. You really need the depth. And William, for example, he may not be able to give a lot in the end, but at least he's giving something now. You haven't seen an absolute thing from the Oliveira who has played in the past month or two, he's played like 45, 50 minutes of football. And the Yaramchuk who just came on today for the first time ever since he got hurt and still did nothing. It's a lot. It's honestly a lot. And I think I agree with this.
Yeah, I mean that like we've been saying. I mean, you're putting yourself in this position to where guys are going to get a lot of these stress injuries, and you're going to have guys like Santiago who today even Panos Cerezo said that he had a bit of a rough game, and it probably comes down to the fact how much football they're playing. Um, you know, like you said, you love that you have these young guys, but I think it would be foolhardy to look at Costulas and Musakitis and think, okay, we can just call up any of these guys and they're going to come in and be a starter. Both those guys were not intended to be in the role that they're in now, but they obviously forced Mendilibar's hand by playing so well. But those are probably the outliers. So, I think we do need to bring in some vets. I would honestly like to stray away from guys like Willian, guys like Oliveira, who, are in their mid 30s, haven't played for a team at a high level in a long time. I mean, I guess we'll see what we can manage, but it's just it's really frustrating because the team is a lot better than these results would have you believe, and we see it in the Super League. I think part of that is just there's a gulf of talent between these Europa teams and even an Ike or a Pauk, but it's just it's frustrating these results because it really shows us that for as much talent as we have, um, the drop off after 12 or 13 players is just huge, and it's hard to recover from.
So what you said on Twitter and now that these stress injuries, for example, I openly said on here as well, I think that when El Cambi went down in the last Super League game, I feared for my fucking life.
Yeah.
Because then you play Costulas up front, and who do you play at the 10 if needed? It's just a domino effect if a main player. Chiquinho and Danny were a bit lucky because I'd say that our midfield is the most full position, even if not every choice is absolute quality. Pirola we've gotten extremely lucky with because he's covering Carmo or even Rechos as we saw today perfectly.
And Biancone. I mean, I would say that center back as well is another very deep position.
Props to Biancon, of course. Costinha and Rodinei also cover each other perfectly when needed, but you get to a domino effect there. Because what happens if, for example, knock on wood, Rodney gets injured, but we also don't have uh, enough wingers because we don't. We really don't.
You're gonna have to start Thanasis Androutsos on the wing.
Fucking Christ. And God fucking forbid what happens if El Kabi gets hurt.
I mean, it's honestly a miracle that he has not had any major injury issues like at all since he joined us, because he plays almost every single game and he usually goes 90 minutes. I mean, and that's part of why
Has he missed a game?
I don't know.
Not necessarily as a starter, but has he? I don't
I don't
think
think.
he
I
has.
mean, I think he's definitely gotten rested, but I don't think he's missed a game through injury. I don't think he's missed a game through injury since he joined us last year, as far as I can remember.
Same. I can't recall an injury. I really can't. But it's like, what's the best example? I'd say the best example is an Oleg of the world, a player that played 3 years back to back to back to back with no backup, nowhere. And then his form just dipped.
Yeah, I mean,
What happens if that happens with someone from the team this year? What do we do?
hopefully it doesn't happen with El Gabi because that's it. Still blows my mind. Obviously,
His form doesn't dip. He's proven.
yeah, he, it doesn't feel like he has been on the same form that he was on last year. His goal return is actually better per game this season than it was last season. Even today, when you'd say that he struggled, he had the penalty save, but I think it was a good penalty. That was just a really, really good save. He hit it hard. He would have gone side netting. Um, yeah, it
Also faced a keeper that fuck knows how tall the keeper I think is close to my height, even taller. He may be 2 point
yeah. Well, and
something.
he's a good kid. I think he saved the penalty, or either saved the penalty or had a really good performance at United. Lars Unestål. So he's a very good goalkeeper. But yeah, knock on wood. If something happens to El Kabi, I don't want to think about the horrors that we would witness on a football pitch because literally, back to my point earlier, he scored 4 of our 5 goals. Outside of him, we have nothing in Europe this season for whatever reason. Uh, so hopefully that he continues to stay healthy because we can't live without him.
As you said, his form, while people expected it to be worse, his form is technically better because even if you look, he's near top scorer. He was top scorer in the Europa League. I don't think he is anymore. He is at the top in the Super League and he's almost top assister in the Super League as well. He's an assist behind. You lose half of your attacking game if he's gone.
Probably more than that. It, really like that. This is kind of the tell, right? You look at the past 3 games in Europa League for Olympiacos. We've scored 1 goal. It was him scoring that wonder goal against Rangers, and that's it. Our entire campaign, we have 1 goal outside of him. Somebody else has to step up. Obviously, you're not going to put a lot of that expectation on Babis Costulas yet. He is super bright when he plays. The fact that he's not scoring goals, not a concern. But you do look at, I do look at a Gelson Martins. I know scoring isn't his main thing, but in some of these Europa games, he's really good, and some he's not. You would hope that a guy like Willian would have been more integrated by this point. He hasn't been. He was okay today, but he's not the player we expected. And then outside of that, who do you look at? Chiquinho out of midfield. We don't really have another striker option. Yorgos Masuras has fallen off a cliff this season. It's tough. I really do think that, like you said,
Where even was he today? Was he on the
I
bench?
no idea. Apparently Kostas Fortounis was in the stadium. We should have asked him to put a jersey on because Jesus Christ, we need it.
Masuras was on the bench.
He was on the bench and he didn't play.
Yeah, wonder.
I would. He hasn't been good, but I would have put him on instead of Yaremchuk personally.
Uh, Building off your point, I'm not, as you said, we don't expect of Zelson to go out there and close games by scoring. And I'm not speaking about today. I agree with you today. He wasn't good today. Uh, but I'm more or less looking up the other side, whether that's William, whether that's Velde, whether that's been Masuras a few times. It's Zelson that has to cover both wings most of the games. And then you have a Babis Kostolas who is slowly finding goals. But as you said, there can't be the expectations of a 16, 17-year-old going to close games for you. You need someone. And because arguably you have better chances from your defense scoring, as we've seen,
I mean,
than
Biancone almost scored again towards the end off one of those corners. I mean, that tells you.
Yaremchuk himself.
He had that one good cross that he put across goal and nobody was there for. But I mean,
I
he's
think
just
that was meant to be a shot.
it. Honestly, with him, it might have been it, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he meant to cross that because if he did mean to cross it, it was a decent cross. But I mean, yeah, I mean that's definitely part of the issue. I mean, he can.
Zelson also, but when you have Zelson on a bad day and Chiquinho is out, no one else.
Well, I mean, as much as he can create his own chances, he's so much better at that. That's what drove us to a conference league last season. You had Podense and Fortunis right next to him all the time. I mean, that was the biggest part of our attack. This season, you've noticed those absences of somebody who's really going to assert themselves in a game. You know, Jelson has done that a lot of the time, but if he's not on, I mean, it's just we're so limited going forward. It's tough to watch, and you get these games where it's like I can count on 2 or 3 fingers how many good chances we had tonight, and it comes down to it being El Cabi or bust. And as good of a player as he is, he can't carry this team by himself.
I'll drive him to the airport my fucking self in January. When I heard he was warming up, I'm like, no, please,
I
for the
I
love of
saw him
Christ.
I saw him running around at halftime. I was like, he is the last player we need on this pitch today.
I was okay with even, honestly, Yaremchuk before him.
Oh, 100%. I mean, he is our worst player by a mile. Like, it's not even close. I wanted to defend him for the longest time, but he useless, absolutely useless.
This is also a very fair point. Babis has to more or less act like a 10 to maybe even a false 9 at times to come back and collect and drive up the ball when Chiquinho, for example, isn't on. So that limits him as well, for
Yeah,
damn sure.
that was. I think that was the biggest thing today. It was so flat in the middle. I mean, you have nothing to push you forward. As good as both Etze and Muzakitis are, I don't think you can start the two of them together and really be effective because again, I think they play such a similar role that it's like it's almost redundant, and you just have just a block in the middle, which it would be good against a team who's going to run at you, but a team like Twente who are happy to sit back for 70 minutes, it's going to hamper your attack by a ton.
It's what we've seen all season. That low block, that aggressive low block as well, is just deadly. We need to scrape every half a chance we have to just score. Can we talk about this man for a second?
I
What a save! First of all, what a save!
I said it. This might be a hot take. I don't care. I think he's a top 10 goalkeeper in the world. That might be me being a homer. I don't know. That was
Goalkeeper or young goalkeeper?
goalkeeper. I
Goalkeeper in general.
name me 10 who you genuinely think are better than him. He's conceded 3 goals in 6 matches in the Europa League, and we played some good teams. I mean,
Speaking
people.
of form right now, I don't think I can name 10.
I mean, both penalties today. Obviously, we give our props to Unerstahl earlier.
Yeah, of
That was
course.
it was a good penalty from Van Volkswinkel too. I mean, it was just a really good save. He knew which way he was going. Clearly, both goalkeepers studied the penalty takers. Um,
Has he conceded a penalty in Europe in the last, ever since he started being number one?
yes, he conceded one to what's his name, Zahavi, in the 6-1.
However, yeah.
Their only goal was the penalty. Um, but I think that's the only penalty he's conceded this season. I think he's saved all the rest because he saved one against Volos in March. That was his first start under Mendilibar. I can't remember. I feel like he's had one or two more, but
He
he's
saved a big majority. That's the point.
he's an incredible. I mean, everything he does. There were a couple other chances tonight where I mean, again, Twente didn't do a whole lot, but they did have a couple good chances. There was one in the second half that was again hit low and hard, and there were players in the way, but he got down to save it. He's really exceptional at claiming crosses. I mean, how many times does a cross come into the box and he doesn't get to it? I mean, I've never seen him flap at a ball. I've never seen him drop a ball. He's always right there. He's
Even that stop from the insane long shot from Stein, where
yeah.
he was off his line, that he made that look way easier than it. That was a rocket of a ball coming towards him.
I mean that's the thing with him that makes him great is for a guy who's 21, he looks like he's been doing this for 10 years. I mean, granted, he made his debut at 17, so he's not that far off. But I mean, he looks like such a veteran for such a young player. And I mean, talking about confidence with Jelson, I think he was off of it today, but you saw Tsolakis. He always is. He's looks so comfortable playing in
I
these
feel
matches.
like I feel like I say this every time, but I feel like he's getting better and better.
Yeah, I mean, he genuinely could end up being like a top 3 or 5 goalkeeper in the world at some point. Obviously, I'm not going to go that far and say he's there yet, but he has superstar potential.
I just want to keep him for one more year.
Dude, that's one of the things I said earlier. I was like, I would do unspeakable things to make sure that he never leaves Olympiacos. I mean,
He will.
he will. I know he will, but he's very quickly becoming one of my favorite Olympiacos players ever. I mean, he's such a good player, and he's always confident and collected, and you never have to worry about him. And I think that's the biggest thing for the goalkeeper.
That's a question.
I agree. I mean, Allison is better. Allison is absolutely better than Solakis.
I'd say he gets into
I think
every side bar Aston, Liverpool. I'd still say City.
Stefan Ortega is arguably their best goalkeeper because I mean Ederson
He's
hasn't.
dropped off, but he's still
He's still really good. I mean, I think I would agree. I would probably say Ederson is better. Outside of that, maybe David Raya is still better as well. Outside of that, I mean, he makes it into 16 out of 20 teams.
For sure.
People will probably argue Pickford. I watched him play against Greece.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, I really hope that he's our starting keeper for the Ethniki as well. I'm done with Odysseus. He's been a good keeper for a long time, but
he needs to play against Scotland for sure.
100%. I mean, this is the thing. As much as you can appreciate what Odysseus has done for us for the past 10 years or whatever it's been, he doesn't play. I mean, you cannot justify starting a player who does not play for his club when you have a guy who starts week in and week out and is in fantastic form and has been in fantastic form for a long time. I mean, you just can't justify it. I argue with a lot of people on this because there's differing opinions, but to me, it makes zero sense to continue to start with this if he's not playing.
I've said the same thing as you. I've said that I'm not writing on this off. Of course, I'm not writing on this off, but he needs a club. Even if he comes back here, he needs a club.
It would be better. Genuinely, it would be better if he comes back and plays for Panathinaikos again or something. As much as I don't want that to happen, I would rather have him playing because he's going to continue to get called up. We know he's a good goalkeeper, but if he's riding on a bench, he can't be your starter. You cannot justify that when you have another option.
The last performance I really want to focus on for today is just once again point out how amazing Costilla has been.
Yeah, I mean,
Everywhere and doing everything.
when he came in, I mean, no slight against the Rodine. I think he's fantastic, but I think that we are a lot more solid on the right side when it is him and Costinha, because I think Costinha, again, he isn't going to have the same flair and the same push forward that Rodine gives you, but he's super physically solid. His positioning is great. He strikes a great balance between staying back, pushing forward to help the attack. I mean, I think him, and I would say the rest of the defense in general. I mean, if it weren't for our back line and Solakis being as fantastic as they are, I mean, we would not even be where we are right now. As disappointed as we are with the Europa League performances on a whole, I mean, if it weren't for those guys, we'd probably have another loss or two rather than draws. So I think a lot of props goes to everybody. Even that Etsos had a rough game today, but throughout most of the campaign, he's been solid, and everyone that steps up, Pirola, Biancone, Carmo, they've all been great. So I think if there is a bright spot today, it's definitely the defense and the goalkeeper. They once again, kept us in this game and gave us the chance to go for it, which fortunately we didn't take.
It's them and Bobbies for sure. Uh, I think that's about it, honestly. As we said before going live, not much to talk about, and not really a point in getting into Porto and Karabakh, given that's how, after an entire transfer window, we just need to focus on getting into the Christmas break with pretty sure it's 2 games, so 2 wins now.
Yeah, we have Lamia and who's the other? Is it Califea?
Califea.
Yeah,
It's
Califea.
Califea now, and it's Lamia after.
Yeah, I mean that needs to be 2 wins. Get into the break in first place. I mean, I think historically we've seen that teams that go into the Christmas break on top of the Super League tend to win it, or at least be thereabouts at the end of the season. So we have to close it out strong. I think we will. Because also, I mean, obviously we want to win the Super League for the sake of the Super League. But another thing I want to point out that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about, Olympiacos is currently in position to qualify directly for the Champions League. If we win our league, because of our coefficient ranking, all of there's 4 teams above us. All of them are well off of their title race. So if we win the league, we don't have to play qualifiers again 2 years in a row. So that would be huge. So these games matter. We have an easier stretch in the league after the gauntlet that we had. We have to take advantage of it.
You're the one that showed me that and reminded me to post that everywhere when I did. So thank you for reminding me again. It's not only the fact that we get into the Champions League without qualifiers, it's the fact that that's 30 million coming in immediately
Yeah.
and a lack of qualifiers. So that
And
saves us in so many departments.
it helps your transfer business because I mean you're going to be able to get better players if you can say, hey,
Guaranteed Champions League. Yeah, 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 yeah.
rather than saying, oh, join us and we have 2 qualifying rounds to play through. We're in the Champions League. We have more financial flexibility. It's a longer preseason.
You can also keep players.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, hopefully we won't have, these long periods of 2 or 3 weeks or we don't know if a guy's going to join or not. I mean, if you have Champions League to promise, that's going to win a lot of guys over.
Yeah, yeah. That's a fair point. Honestly,
He will be knocking on the door of UEFA headquarters the day we win the Champions. I mean, we win the Super League. He will get on that.
Jesus Christ,
Bang.
that sentence,
A misspeak, but hopefully someday.
think we're done. Honestly, I don't want to keep you for too long as well. Let you go eat because Christ.
You got to get some sleep as well, man. I mean, both of us are getting down to the wire here.
Yeah, man. Of course. Thank you for joining me once again, and we'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll be back very soon.
Absolutely. See you guys.
Thank you, man. Thank you, everyone.